Hi, I'm Rob, and welcome to the Uncut Network. Every month, we rotate between directors, actors, and super specific genres. We've covered everything from exploitation to things your parents will absolutely approve of, relative unknowns to household names, and everything in between. The Uncut Network is the movie podcast of all the niches, and to cover all those things and more, I'm joined by Kat. Hello there.
Hey.
And Kim, first time on the pod.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me.
It's been way too long. I've mentioned on the show this is why I stopped doing the random thing, because it felt like I was just consciously ignoring people.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a lot to get through and try and link people up, so it's fine. No hard feelings.
Yeah, so we dropped that, and it's just we're picking it by who's on the episode now. And I picked this one, which is the Soska Sisters, Jen and Sylvia Soska. How are you both doing then? How are you both doing?
Yeah, good. I have... when I was on here last, it was still too warm. It's finally autumn. It's finally the weather that I like. I can sit here with a peppermint tea and not melt. So yes, I'm very well.
Yeah, I'm all good as well. Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I am a perpetually cold person, but I do prefer the colder months to the summer. So I am, and also like most of my wardrobe is things that you layer on top of each other. So I never know what to wear in the summer. So yeah, I'm settling into the colder months. It's making me happier.
You've both avoided the hell rain, I'm assuming, because I don't think you'd be recording. Honestly, that's kind of a self-answering question, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're fine.
Yeah. Down in Essex, it being okay down there?
Yeah, I mean, I was at Celluloid Screams a couple of weeks ago when there was all the flooding in Sheffield and stuff, and it felt like apocalypse times. Like the hotel's 5 minutes away from the cinema, and in that walk I turned up and looked like a drowned rat. It was ridiculous. Like the water was just pouring off my face, and it basically meant that everybody was just there for the day, which is nice until the restaurant attached to the cinema can't do any more food orders. So I think myself and a couple of others were the last 3 food orders, and everybody else had to brave the floods. It was, yeah.
I imagine, was that like a miserable festival experience? Because I imagine on day 2 it's just like constant sneezing at every screening.
It wasn't too bad. The big disappointment was Adam Buxton was supposed to come and do like a live like video cast thing on Video Nasties, but there were literally no trains out of London coming into Sheffield because Sheffield was just like the train track was underwater. So instead they had the RKSS guys there for the opening film We Are Zombies, and they directed Turbo Kid. So what they ended up doing was a last minute live commentary screening of Turbo Kid. So they like got up and sort of talked through, which was really nice because it had been about 8 years since either of them had actually seen the film. So they kind of kept getting lost in the film themselves, and they had like some really interesting anecdotes about like Michael Ironside and stuff. So it was a decent replacement.
It's a fun movie as well.
I love Turbo Kid.
Yeah. Check that out if you've not seen it, by the way, listeners. Great movie. So, yes, that brings us to the director, or directors. I think this is actually the first duo that we've ever had on the podcast. And it is the Soska Sisters. So before we jump into the movies that we'll be doing, which are American Mary and Rabid, what are your feelings on the pair? I preface that, by the way, because when we picked this, I was told that they're controversial, and that's kind of missed me by, so I'm kind of digging a little bit as well.
Yeah, I can't... I remember that they are controversial. I can't remember what the actual reason for it is. I think they've said a lot of weird stuff on social media. Was that the issue?
All it takes now?
I think what happened was, at the time that Rabid came out, they started sharing promotional images on their social channels, and the hero image for Rabid is a really gnarly one where you can see like the extent of the jaw injury, and they had their account banned by Twitter. It was when Twitter used to ban people for having like inappropriate material. And they obviously wanted to reinstate their Twitter because other sites, other outlets were also running that same image, and they weren't being banned or put onto any sort of like warnings. And I think they had the unfortunate thing of some of their supporters who helped them get their account back had controversial views on certain things, and they got looped in by proxy. I have interviewed the Soskas a few times over the years. I'm quite friendly with both of them, and I personally have never experienced anything um, untoward from them. But yeah, I know that there are a few stories circulating for various reasons. But I also think that some of that comes with the territory of just being a woman in the industry. You know, I think men get away with so much, but you know, these women like a tweet by somebody who is then later found out to have extreme views and quick throw them in the bin, whereas certain men can do what they want for years, and it's fine.
Well, look at James Gunn. He got reinstated from Disney despite having some pretty vile excuses for jokes. But, you know, just the nature of the industry. But in general sense, what are your feelings, before we jump into the movies, what are your feelings on the pair as a pair of filmmakers?
I think I've seen most things that they've done. I think See No Evil 2 is another one that
Yeah.
they directed, and also Catherine Isabel's in that as well. Yeah, I mean, I really like their stuff. I think it's really interesting, and I think especially with like Rabid, getting to see them take like a different approach to like the same kind of story, but sort of give the that character a different sort of backstory and approach to discovering that she's a a strange rabies carrying vampire thing. So yeah, I do think their approach to storytelling is really interesting, and their films always have really like interesting visuals, and they're like, I'm not the biggest fan of like gore or anything. I'm not great with that, but I think the Soska Sisters managed to have very like disgusting things on screen that are also like very beautiful to watch at the same time. Like a lot of the stuff in American Made is very like graphic, but I'm never like particularly grossed out about it. I think they use it all very well, and I think I sort of discovered them from American Made, and I was really excited like when the Rabid remake came out to kind of see what they've done with it. And yeah, I'm just want to see what they do like more of in the future. I think they have a really like unique, you can kind of tell it's them, I think, on the screen from their stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I found them through American Mary as well. I think it was whenever it came out onto DVD for the first time, and around that time, it was a rarity to find a female genre director, let alone a duo of them. And so it was interesting to see what they'd done. I'm a big Catherine Isabel fan, so she was kind of like the draw for me to watch American Mary. And I've kind of followed what they've done since. They've had a couple of misses. They did that Dean Cain action film, which wasn't, I can't remember its name, which wasn't their best work, but they
Pays
kind
the
of
bills.
yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. They funded their first two films, Dead Hooker in the Trunk and American Mary, themselves. Their parents remortgaged their house for them to make American Mary. It was, it was very much a family project. And then because they got some notoriety with that, studios were interested, and they ended up doing a couple of films with the WWE films, which is where Cena Weevil 2 got made. And then they kind of disappeared for a while before they did the Rabid remake. So I was looking forward to seeing that. And I think I'm one of the only people in the world, minus the Fright Fest Halloween audience, that has actually seen their last. I mean, they've done a zombie film since, but they did an S&M sort of focused film that was screened at Fright Fest Halloween last year. I'm pretty sure I am one of the only people that's seen it. So yeah.
Not got distribution yet at all.
No, and I think outside of the Fright Fest Halloween, it only had a screening at a festival in South Africa. I think it had another one lined up, but it got banned. So it's basically the story of a guy who books in for a 72-hour therapy session with a dominatrix. He's using her as a way to deal with some trauma that he experienced as a child, which is something that people actually do sometimes with these particular workers. And it was very sort of psychological. Jen and Sylvia both starred in it as well as directing it. And I think it was just seen as a little bit too controversial. And we know people's views on sex in cinema, and this was about a sex worker. And it also starred Tommy Pistol, who is a star of adult films, and this was kind of his first like straight film role. So again, there was a controversy there, and nobody wears a great deal for a lot of the film. So it's a tricky one to get distribution, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately. That segues quite nicely into the first of the two movies that we're going to talk about tonight, 2012's American Mary.
I quit med school today, but that shouldn't come as a surprise to you.
What's this?
It's my resume.
No, you don't need it to work here, but it is nice to find out some of your dirty secrets. Want to be a doctor?
Surgeon.
Follow me.
What do I have to do?
Yeah, we preferred if Rat was not to die tonight.
You can put the bed down, Dr. Mason. I'm just a desperate woman looking for help.
What exactly does she want me to do? I'm changing specialties, Dr. Grant. Have you ever heard of body modification? Do you think I'm crazy?
American Mary stars Catherine Isabel as med student Mary Mason, who is an aspiring surgeon who is behind on her bills and takes a gig as well. She goes to be like a dancer, but she ends up becoming kind of like a mob doctor briefly, and through that she ends up connecting with the body modification community and kind of becomes their go-to person. Meanwhile, she suffers trigger warning. She suffers from a sexual assault, and she gets an interesting vengeance on the perpetrator of that attack.
Kim, feelings on American Mary?
I love it. I went to log it on Letterboxd after watching it for this, and I've apparently watched it like 4 times in the last like 2 years, which like isn't that much, but it feels like quite a lot for having just discovered it. I'm the same as Kat. I'm a huge Catherine Isabel fan. Ginger Snaps is one of my like absolute favorite films. So like anything she's in will make me want to watch it because I love her. So I think that was the thing, and I think it's just yeah, like I said, it's beautiful to look at. I think it's like an interesting addition to like the rape revenge genre of like that is sort of a central point of the story, but it's not the entire plot of the film. She had this like kind of story going on anyway when that happens, and it's just obviously kind of escalates a bunch of stuff. But I think Catherine Isabel is amazing in this as Mary. She's so funny, and like just a bunch of the faces she makes when she gets put in these like mental situations with like accidentally becoming a mob doctor and doing this like kind of being chucked into this world of extreme body modification. And then it's really interesting to see her kind of like start to own it and sort of like grow as a character. But yeah, I just think it's so nice, like beautiful to look at, and it's like an interesting look at, I guess, a whole like kind of subculture that I don't really know much about, of like the whole like body modification stuff. I think just seeing the different things that people do and like want to look like and stuff was just really interesting side of it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Catherine Isabel is so good in this. I really like how the film is very much about sexuality and sensuality, but it's never gratuitous with any of that. I know that previously when she starred in Freddy versus Jason, like the director was insistent that she gets naked and she didn't want to, and she ended up using a body double, and it was all really icky. So I remember being surprised that she then turned up in a film that did feel so sexual, but then the most that she's ever it's lingerie. I think the Soskas, being women, have a really good eye for a way to shoot these sort of scenes where even with clothes on, you can still get the same feeling as if they don't. So that's something that I really enjoy about this film, is its sensuality.
Yeah, there was two things for me that really stood out. I don't want to equate every Canadian filmmaker to David Cronenberg, because that's just incredibly reductive. But that sort of early era, when he was still in Canada, and the sort of the sense of danger that those early movies did, very much in this too. Sort of maybe not danger. That's a weird way to phrase it, but it's just very uneasy. It gets under your skin almost completely, this, because this is the first time I've seen it, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but a bit icky. It was a bit much for me. I found my button, apparently.
I think it's just like, yeah, it is pretty graphic in some bits, but I think it's just, I guess the kind of most graphic bit is her getting her revenge on Dr. Grant. But I think it's just I don't know if it's, like I said, I don't like a lot of gore, but I don't know if it's just because in my brain I'm just like, yes, he fully 100% deserves this. Like, she should, this is like, so if it it doesn't really trigger my gore reflex as much as like my justice one, I guess. So it kind of like gets a pass for that. I think because it's so like, because everything is very like, yeah, surgical and medical and kind of procedural and stuff, it doesn't feel as like as gross as some other films. Like, I'm not a fan of zombie films. If anyone's ever getting like their guts ripped out with their hands, that's my like that's my limit. But with American Mania, it's like, yeah, for some reason it doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really registering any gore with it. I don't know. It's just like complete like blind like blinkers on. But yeah, and I'm terrible with surgery. I can watch all sorts of like gross, icky films, but you sit me in front of a medical documentary, I can't watch. I can't. Like, insides are supposed to be insides. I'm not supposed to see them.
24 hours in A&E is like the worst program in the world for me. It's just, no, how can you watch that? It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, when I was pregnant, I purposely watched no birthing videos or anything because I did not want to know what was coming, because it was too late. So I didn't want to know what I was going through until I experienced it, and then I had the wonders of gas and air to make me forget. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Cronenberg thing. They are massive David Cronenberg fans, so that's,
you can really feel it.
They obviously, and there's a few little nods to some of Cronenberg's work within it. They always like to get sort of a Dead Ringers reference into everything that they do. So you've got like the red surgical scrubs at one point, and yeah, I think they'll be very happy that you felt those Cronenberg influences.
Well, atmosphere and tone. And I think, because we're talking about the sort of the gore as well, I think we kind of have to touch upon the body modification, because I think that's what just made me stomach just turn. One character is Betty Boop. That's sort of like the entry level. She wants to make herself look like Betty Boop, which people do that. There's cases of people turning themselves into celebrities or even cats. I've seen one guy who's turned himself into a cat, but not judging. It's just, it is what it is. But it's the person that they introduce. I mean, that whole segment which sort of runs throughout the whole movie, where she wants to be more like a doll and have certain sort of sexual aspects of her anatomy sort of taking out. It's just, yeah, no. It's a button apparently, but yeah, it's just too much for me. It was not many movies where I have to press forward or fast forward, but yeah, those bits, they got me good.
No, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I guess it's just hard to envisage, I guess, what all these people are feeling and the way that they like they talk about like what they need to like feel whole and like feel like a person and things. I think it's really interesting seeing like the differences. Obviously a lot of the you see people with like real body modifications and stuff like kind of later on in the film. So like people do go out and do stuff like this. I think it's interesting to see that the stuff that they need to feel like properly like a full person. And it's really interesting to see what the kind of difference in scale is. And I guess with Ruby, she still wants to look very feminine and things, but she just doesn't want to have that like kind of overly sexualized element to her. Her husband clearly feels very differently, which is unfortunate. But I think she's a really interesting character because she still wants to have like boobs and everything, but she doesn't want to have nipples. She wants to look like a Barbie doll, but not like not overly sexualized, and that clearly makes her feel amazing. She is willing to pay a lot of money and have surgery in like a vet's clinic to get that done, but her husband clearly has a very different opinion. I guess it's just a different, like, there's a lot of like men in this film that try and like have control over the women in different ways, and I guess her husband's just the same thing. He clearly wants to still have her look the way that he thinks. He's not really interested in her changing herself because that's what she needs to feel complete. He's just being very selfish about it, I think, which is quite similar to the approach of Dr. Grant and the other surgeons as well. They're not really thinking about Mary or the other women. They're just going for what they want to do in the moment. So it's unfortunate. It's a shame. Yeah. Do we ever find out what happens to Ruby? Because we don't see her. I was saying that to my boyfriend when we watched it, because her husband attacks Beatrice, but do you think Ruby's fine, or do you think he
I don't
attacked
think
her as well?
I don't think she survived that, really.
Yeah, I'm kind of hopeful that she did, because we don't see it. But I just wondered if there was like something I'd missed that mentions.
If if he did that to the messenger, I imagine.
Yeah.
He did something worse to her.
I don't think it is ever addressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's but I mean, I find all of the body modification people absolutely fascinating. I remember when you see the Soskas in the film as the twins who can't live without each other. That in itself was an interest, because twins have always fascinated me. It's that you have this other person there forever, but obviously not necessarily forever. And I think it's, as strange as it comes across in the film, it's also quite sweet that these two women want to like always have a part of the other with them. It was my first Soska film, and it did, for me, sort of, I began to wonder where lines blurred between fact and fiction. And I'm not going to lie, I did sort of, I don't know, I sort of was like, I wonder if this is something that they themselves like have thought about doing. So that was a little strange, but I think the film as a whole just, like, it does shine a light on this subculture that, as Kim was saying, not many of us know anything about. And it seems, when you see it explored in American Mary, it seems like such a good fit for genre stories. And yet, even after American Mary came out and did well, we still don't really get many films set in this world. And it's really fascinating that people want to express themselves in this way, and the lengths, like with Ruby, that they're going to go to. They're going to go to like a black market vet surgery with a med student. She hasn't even finished school, but she's prepared to spend over and above to achieve her dream, no matter the risks. And that's something that I always find fascinating about anybody that wants any sort of elective surgery.
Yeah. To loop back around to the rape revenge thing, because that's not the entire being, as Kim said, it's just one of the many strings. It's not really a common trope or subgenre these days. It's kind of it's fell by the wayside. I think Revenge is the only one that really comes to mind, the French movie. But it's quite grotesque in this. They really are selling this aspect of her character story. Because the lecturer, I can't remember the name of him, but honestly, I don't think lecturers can be like that with people. Like, if you miss a lecture, they'll ring you up and then start swearing at you. It's pretty bad teacher etiquette, I'd imagine. But I can't speak for America. But yeah, it's just that entire plot thread is, I think it just plays into like the really disturbing aspect of it, and it feels like everything and everybody is dangerous when even somebody who's in a profession that's supposed to care for their students and nurture their students is just absolutely irredeemable and reprehensible.
I struggle with the fact he's called Dr. Grant because I'm a massive Jurassic Park fan. And whenever they say Dr. Grant, I'm like, oh no, stop it, you're ruining Sam Neill.
Oh, that's not possible. You can't ruin Sam Neill.
No,
He's
it's
great.
true.
I think his name actually is Alan Grant as well, because I'm sure they full named him at one point, and I was like, "That's the guy from Jurassic Park." Like, so yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the Soskas are kind of like they're around my age, so they would have grown up with Jurassic Park. So yeah, it was probably intentional, but still, stop trying to ruin him.
Yeah, but that aspect of it is really, I know it's meant to be icky, but it's especially icky in this because it's sort of corrupting of everything in her life.
Yeah, I think it's like she's obviously got so much other stuff going on, and then that just on the top of it, I mean, is a terrible thing in herself and in itself. Sorry, and then she's obviously got someone, many people actually, because there's a lot of surgeons that she works with in this position of power, like totally abusing their trust of her, and then it also just basically like ruins her entire life really, because her dream was to become a surgeon, and she has to drop out of medical school as well because she can't go back and like face them. So yeah, it's I feel like they can see that she's struggling with like money and obviously coming to class and stuff. He's clearly not remotely sympathetic about that, as you said, but yeah, I think it's just this. I think it kind of shows that this thing that clearly they've been doing to a lot of women, that they don't give a second thought to. Like they just go back to their everyday life, but it literally like changes the trajectory of Mary's entire life, and they sort of do it without a second thought. Yeah, I always think it sounds weird to say like I really like rape revenge films, but I really enjoy a lot of
cathartic.
Yeah, I think, and I think usually ones directed by women are sort of get a lot of it righter, and I think especially like the actual sexual assault scene itself is probably done in it, like you said, it's absolutely brutal and it is disgusting, but it's not, like Kat said, remotely like sexualized or anything like that. It's meant to be
grueling.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't cut away, doesn't sort of do it in a sort of a stylish way. It's just they drug her and that's it.
Yeah.
It's grisly. It's probably the worst. Well, no, not probably about it. It is the most difficult aspect of it to watch completely. I don't know how you can watch it multiple times.
But I like how it is just almost a footnote in the story in a way. Like we said, she's already working, she's already done the work with Ruby at this point, and she's already known. She's obviously trying not to get drawn down that path, but then as soon as this happens, she's like, right, okay, dropping out of school, not going near them. I need a new turkey to practice on, because when she's like studying to be a surgeon, she's there like doing incisions and suturing up a turkey, and you can't really do a body modification on that, so she gets the next best thing. And it is, I also find rape revenge films very satisfying, which is probably wrong, and I agree that female directors tend to come at it from a different direction. I mean, the fact that during the sexual assault we see no flesh, she still keeps her dress on, and that there's so many other films in this subgenre where you have to see everything of the woman, which just makes me feel that to me is the step too far. But in this, I think it's handled in a way that you get the impact of the attack without any titillation, and even the aftermath isn't really dwelled on. She goes home, and then suddenly it's weeks later, a month later or something, and she's set up and she's no longer in the med school. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to analyze this sort of story.
That is one of the points I had sort of problems with. It feels really abrupt. Maybe it's coloured by other movies that you're expecting some sort of rage from the character, but no, there's no sort of interaction with the school she goes to. It's just, right, that's it, done, finished, I'm doing something else now.
She goes home and throws some stuff around.
Yeah, I guess. It just feels a bit abrupt for me. That's all.
I think the whole thing's quite abrupt. Like I was saying that when I was watching it, like they drug her so quickly when she comes into that party. Like they literally, it feels like the scene just plays out in real time, and it must be like 5 minutes because they give her like 2 drinks and whatever they've got in them. So I think like, yeah, the whole thing feels quite abrupt. It goes from her just thinking she's going to this party and trying to like further her career and make connections with all these like high up surgeons to cut to the like attack scene. And then I think on the other end it just does the same as well. She just like kind of has, like Kat said, goes home and kind of throws stuff around, and then just like it's kind of cuts right to the revenge part in the middle. It's a sort of very condensed version of the story because, yeah, like we've kind of mentioned, it's not her whole thing. She has this other stuff kind of going on, and it is kind of all sort of connected. But it sort of felt like it made sense in that capacity, I guess, because it's just very, I guess it's not it's not like Last House on the Left or anything, or I Spit on Your Grave, where there's very prolonged attack scenes and then sort of the rest of the film spent getting revenge. It sort of felt very like, yeah, abrupt on both sides, I guess.
Mary's quite a pragmatic character as well. Like we see previous to that, you know, when she's in the hospital, she's told to go and like tell the family that the dad's had a heart attack, and she, you know, we don't hear what she says, but you know, she's in and out pretty quickly, and then she's told to say, well, now go and tell them that they've passed away. And again, there's no hesitation, there's no trepidation. She's just straight in and delivers the news. So I kind of feel that her reaction to the assault is partly dictated by her personality type. She's just compartmentalized, like, right, this has happened, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave school, I'm going to do this, going to do that. So I think it made sense in terms of that. I think if she had been, as we see so often, the blubbering wreck, I don't think that the rest of the film would work as well as it does.
That's true. And of course, you have to talk about the revenge, because I think that may be the most unique I've ever seen, at least in an American movie or North American movie. About midway, and we see him hung on meat hooks with both of his arms cut off and his mouth sewn shut, which is justified, but it's very extreme.
For me, it's when clients are looking through her lookbook to see the other modifications that she's done, and you know that they've all come from him, and they're like, oh god, this guy must have been extreme, and she's like, oh yeah, no, he was very extreme. It's that to me that I think is
I didn't
sort of
pick up on
sets.
that.
Yeah, that's the bit to me that stands out more than actually seeing it. It's the wondering what's in this book, like the other things that you don't see that she's done to him, because yeah, he's basically her guinea pig.
Yeah, I think it's good that like he obviously ruined her career. She's dropping out of medical school, but she's then using him to like further her new career because she practices on him. And yeah, I think it's rather, I mean, God knows how long she would have kept him alive and things if she hadn't have like been discovered and sort of had to get rid of him. But it just feels like we don't see like how long as well he's kind of been like torturing her at college before we join the story as well. So it feels very justified because he was he wasn't nice to her before the party. He was trying to just like make everything like ruin her time, phoning her up, like shouting abuse at her and things. He didn't seem like a very caring member of the teaching profession. So I think his punishment is just this prolonged violence on her side in a way that leaves him like conscious, I guess, and feeling everything, and just hopefully having the time to think about what he did, and realizing that he deserves kind of every bit of it.
It's very shrewd as well, the implications of what they do, because less patient filmmaker maybe would show every bit of gore, every whatever, but just implying what he's been through, I think makes it just that what I mentioned earlier, just unsafe and dangerous, which is very, very rare in that space. Other than sort of it being sort of sexualized, I mean.
Yeah, I think she like when she lists the things that she's going to do to in the first time, like teeth filing and genital modification and stuff. Like you don't really see anything. She kind of like clamps his tongue, I think, and then it kind of cuts away. But then to cut back to him the second time, and he's literally like missing most of his limbs. Like his face is all sewn up. He's got like stuff written across his neck. He's got like a big stretched ear and everything. It's just, you can sort of picture how long she must have spent and how like methodical she's been about it, because it's like, again, it's all very surgical. It's not like she's just like chopping bits off him and leaving him to bleed out and things. She's spending the time to make it as as horrible as possible for him. And yeah, I think you're right, like not seeing it just cut into him suddenly looking like that is far more shocking than if you'd seen her like slicing his limbs off.
At the end of the day as well, she is a doctor, and you get this throughout the film. You get the sense that she doesn't want people to die. When she's called in to be like the mob doctor, she doesn't know this man. She understands he's a criminal, but she does her best to save him. And then we see repeated a lot of times whenever she has had to do something a little bit ickier, she is seen like throwing up afterwards. She very much can't handle the stress of these sorts of situations. And I think as much as he has caused her this pain, I don't think her intention is to ever kill him until her hand is forced and she has to dispose of it. I think just that whole doctor mentality means that she can't willingly take another life until she's pushed to the extreme.
Yeah. With the nature of rape revenge movies means that men don't really come out of them very well. We kind of get a good going over in them. But there is one exception to the rule in this, I feel, at least. There is one character who I feel helps make this work for me, because it didn't have that sort of lightness of touch in one character, at least. It'd just be too grim. It'd be much too grim. And that's her, I guess it's bodyguard, is it? Is that effectively what he is? The big guy who's around her a lot? And he gets her a meal when he thinks she's going to have a bad day, or just tells her, not a nice story, but it's a relatable story for her situation.
Yeah, he's a good egg. He gets her a milkshake and a burger and stuff. And yeah, he would be sort of a bodyguard. He used to work, I think when we first see him, he's working at the club, and then obviously she takes him on for her work. And yeah, he seems to get her in a way that some of the other male characters who want to know her don't. And yeah, there is that really sort of nice scene where he's recounting, like, was it like the murder of his mother or something, like the home invasion gone wrong or whatever. But he's probably the closest to a good guy.
I think he's the only person that makes her like genuinely smile as well when he gives her the milkshake, and then she's like kind of all teary-eyed and just like, this is really good, and like actually properly smiles at him. Like, I think it's, you've never really seen her, like, even with her like granny on the phone and stuff, like you can tell she loves her obviously, but she's always seems like her mind's on something else when she's trying to speak to her and stuff. She never really has time to have that connection with her because she's got so much other stuff going on. So I think that woman with the milkshake, it's nice to see her sort of relax just for a second and just take some time to do something nice that doesn't involve scalpels.
Yeah, just be human for a moment. She doesn't really have an opportunity for a lot of that. But as you've both seen it more than one time, this is my first time, I have to sort of stress, does it hold together? Because there's a lot of plot, and I'm not sure I have it all sort of organised in my head, especially in that sort of back third. It feels like there's 3 sort of stories sort of concurrently going on.
I mean, I haven't watched it as many times as Kim, and there's been a lot of space in between. But I think it definitely it holds up. It's always interesting to watch, and you do sort of notice like little bits. And I always forget that he's called Alan Grant, and then spend the next couple of weeks feeling really sad.
Yeah, I think it's I think you're right. It is quite plot heavy, but I love the way it's sort of all. I mean, I don't like the ending. It makes me very sad, but I do love the way it sort of loops back round to the beginning, I guess, in the end, with like Ruby kind of coming back when we haven't really seen her for a lot of the film. So it is good. But yeah, I think I mean, I watched this. I double billed this and Rabid. I watched Rabid first, and I sort of started. It was quite late at night, so we're not going to blame Rabid, but I did sort of start falling asleep a little bit. And then, but then when American Mary came on, I was like, "Oh, it's American Mary," and I just was like completely awake. And it's nearly 2 hours long, I think, so it's quite long. I don't think it's ever, it's never like lost its appeal, and I probably pick up on stuff that I maybe missed, because there's quite a lot of stuff going on. I probably picked up on stuff on subsequent watches that I kind of missed the first time. But I think it's a good. There's it's a big spider web of plot and interconnected characters, and I think it all concludes quite nicely at the end. But there's quite a lot going on in that last chunk.
There's like little motifs that I think are good in the storytelling as well. Like, is it Beatrix, the character, where she won't answer the calls, she doesn't want her anywhere near her, in the way that sort of loops around as sort of the how her story concludes. I think there's nice little patterns in the storytelling. It's just there's so many patterns at once. It'll take more than one viewing to sort of pass them all out, I think. But anything else about American Mary that we've not mentioned that either you have a burning desire to bring up?
I think I could just talk about Catherine Isabella's like clothes for like an hour. I think she looks like, I mean, again, talking about ginger snaps, I was like obsessed with that in high school, and like every item of clothing that her and Bridget wore. And I think it's nice to see like a more like kind of modern version. And I'm obsessed with how amazing that she looks, even when she's in like her cool red scrubs and things. She just always looks like absolutely brilliant. So
production design, is amazing.
I think everyone's like, all the like women and the dancers kind of costumes and everything are beautiful. But there's something particularly special about the way Catherine Isabella's dressed in this. It's just she just looks, I think even like the first time we see her kind of like in the classroom, the first time we see her is when she's suturing up the turkey, but just even that, she's got like her hair up like all messy, but you can just see like how like focused she is, like suturing up and stuff. I just think you can just tell that she's a very like she doesn't look super alternative, but you can feel that she's more at home in like that alternative community with like the body modification people. Like she looks very at home in like her massive high heels and her cool apron and stuff, probably more than she did when she was in the hospital, just dressed quite normal,
like a hyper goth.
I
mean, the fact that the parents financed this with a remortgaging, they got a lot for very little. This is very well made in that regard, I think. But Kat, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna echo what Kim said. Like the costumes in this film are so amazing, and I just want sort of like everything that Mary owns, and I definitely did not dress like that when I was at university. She's in like these really like nice put together looks and like dresses and stuff, and I was jeans and t-shirt, hoodie, maybe my hair had been washed that day, maybe not. So it's a very stylized character, very stylized film dealing with some real world issues, and I think that to me is what appeals. I tune out sometimes if films look too real. I feel that they like stop preaching at me almost in a way. But like something like this, it's very much a dark gothic like fairy tale sort of almost, and I like sort of disappearing into these strange worlds that probably do exist in some capacity somewhere in the underbelly of the world, but my paths are never going to cross with that. So I kind of like seeing these sort of films.
I see 20 or 30 girls come in here every day from small towns with big dreams. Some girls crack under the pressure. You're going to be great.
What's it feel like to walk into a room? It's like in the middle of winter. You're the sun.
It's everything. You know what my mother used to call me? Dangerous. You're a dangerous girl. She was right. I am dangerous.
Taking a break in the recording. Hey, with Kat and Kim to, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to keep up with anything related to the show and myself, that's Uncut Robcast across all social media. But also, if you enjoyed the show and you want to support it, besides following on social media, you can check out the Patreon of the show that this falls under, the umbrella that this falls under, which is the Geek Show. And on the Geek Show, there's all sorts of extra goodies related to this show. It's a podcast called Uncut from the Video Aisle, in which we look at horror movies horror movie franchises, to be more specific, ones that don't really get talked about in any sort of extended way, especially when it comes to podcasts that do retrospectives or any sort of online discourse, really. And the one that we're doing now is the VHS series, and the most recent episode that dropped was Viral. Not a great movie, but I think those are the more interesting episodes, really. Also, there is a bonus episode of a sister podcast to the show, Pop Screen. I've recorded some Nick Cave stuff, which will be coming out pretty soon. What else is there? Oh yes, there's articles about Red Dwarf, X-Files, Doctor Who, and if you're not sci-fi, I also do a series called Fantastic Asia, which has previously went under the monikers of Uncut. No, not Uncut, it was Unseen Asia. And the most recent movie I did there was a weird little thing called Hell's Garden, which is a studio picture in Japan, which marries together, I should say, it marries together sort of Japanese gang flicks that you might have seen, Crow Zero, or more classic stuff that you might get in the 60s and 70s. Marries that together with the idea of office ladies, which is just what it sounds like, but Japan has a title for this, don't they? And that's just the way it is. And that's an interesting movie. So I've got another one coming up pretty soon from the director of House, if you're not being pretentious. A few of his movies dropped on Amazon Prime through Third Windows, so one of those will be dropping as an article before the end of the month. And on the last day of the month is last night, in which we look at what we've been talking about or what we've been watching over the previous month. And because it's December coming up next, you can't really have one of those drop on New Year's Eve, so we're doing something a little bit special that recalls our annual Christmas tradition on mine and Graham, who runs Pop's previous podcast, Cinema Eclectica. So that's something to look forward to over on the Patreon. But right, yes, let's jump right back into it. I'm picking who we're going to be doing in a future episode, looping round to directors Uncut again. Nicholas Winding Refn. Do we have any feelings on him? Because I know people have some very, very animated opinions on his stuff.
I really like Drive, but that's maybe more because of Ryan Gosling. And off the back of Drive, I went to Kex or Sex or however you say it, and bought Only God Forgives, and I regret that decision still to this day because I absolutely hated it. I thought it was the most pretentious piece of wank I've ever laid eyes on. Don't
watch his TV shows then, because he got worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I really, really hated that movie. But
he's the Neon Demon guy, right?
Yeah,
he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Neon Demon. Drive, I love the soundtrack of Drive. Like that soundtrack is amazing. But Neon Demon, I really enjoyed. I haven't endured Only God Forgives, but I used to work for the distributor, and right behind my desk was the poster.
Don't bother.
I kind of like Only God Forgives. I don't know whether it's going to hold up at all, but at the time it was that sort of it felt like my movies aren't really sort of mainstream accessible. You think you like my movies, I'll give you my movie.
Yeah, I think maybe off the back of the success of Drive.
And then he went stir crazy and made possibly the most obnoxious studio movie that's ever existed. Up there, anyway.
What was that one?
Only God Forgives. I'm pretty sure that the studio money made that, because he was a big deal at that point, yeah.
Okay. He did do Bronson, actually. which
That was pre-Drive.
yeah, which I don't mind. I think again it's more down to Tom Hardy. I think a lot of his stuff seems style over substance, but I've never seen Neon Demon.
Oh, Neon Demon is definitely all style over substance.
Is it?
There's lots of neon and sort of like synth score and pretty people doing grotesque things. So
I like Neon Demon too, and he's also got a trilogy of Mads Mikkelsen when he was working in Denmark, the Pusher trilogy, which I've never seen, but Mads Mikkelsen's he's great, so plenty of ways for that to go. Should be an interesting episode, and it's also getting some people on the podcast who haven't been on for a while, so a win-win, unless I have to watch one of his TV shows, and then it's just, they're bad.
What TV shows has he done?
He did. You put me on the spot now.
I think I've heard about one of them, but
I think one was called Copenhagen Cowboy.
Right. Okay. No, I don't know about
that one was particularly bad for all the referenisms. What else has he done? Too Old to Die Young. He did that TV show too, miniseries. He created Valhalla Rising's another thing he's done, which that's another Mads Mikkelsen one. Almost silent Viking movie. So he's got stuff. But he did that streaming platform, didn't he, by WNR, and he just sort of rescued a load of super obscure movies that were probably best left being obscure and put them on his streaming platform. So he's an interesting character.
I'll give him that.
If nothing else.
Tell me more about these meat cravings.
It's not just the meat, it's the blood. There's something about it.
It's not uncommon for patients to report changes in taste post-surgery. It's a side effect of the anesthesia. Things don't taste the same. We crave things we've never eaten before. How's your appetite?
I'm hungry all the time. I can't keep anything down. I have these severe stomach pains. When the pain is too much, that's when the hallucinations start, and I see myself.
Please. Miss Miller.
I'm drinking blood.
You're dreaming.
Why am I dreaming about drinking blood?
Well, people who dream about drinking blood often have unfulfilled yearnings. It's tied to the guilt of desire.
I don't feel guilty.
Are you in control of the dreams? Or do the dreams control you?
Sometimes I am in control of them. Sometimes it just seems like I'm watching myself. Like I'm me, but I'm somebody else. These nightmares.
Hallucinations.
It's making me feel like I'm becoming a monster.
Brings us to the back half of the show, in which we talk about the second movie from the Soska Sisters, which in this case is 2019's Rabid. Kim, what's this one about?
This one is about Rose, who is a fashion designer, sort of having a bit of a she's all that moment where you can tell she's very beautiful, but they're desperately trying to make her like not beautiful, who has survived a car crash that killed her, the rest of her family by the sounds of it, and then immediately is involved in another traffic accident that leaves her with very severe facial and chest injuries. And she immediately loses her job as well because of that. And she gets invited to this like clinic to take part in like experimental stem cell surgery, which she signs up to because they offer to pay for it if she will just like donate her body to science, basically. And it works. She looks beautiful. It sort of fixes the scarring that she had on her face from the original car accident, and she gets loads of confidence, but she also gets this weird like vampire tentacle thing that gives her like a lust for blood, that when she bites other people or even just like half drinks a shot glass and then gives it to them, she infects other people with this like mutated form of rabies, which is the titular Rabid that everyone else ends up going, while she's just kind of like living her life blissfully unaware for the most part that she is infecting a large portion of the country.
Yeah. Kath, feelings on Rabid? The remake, I guess I should preface that by saying.
I saw this before the remake. I only sort of recently watched the original, and they're very different. They are very different beasts. Just in terms of the Rose character in Cronenberg's original, the teeth are in the armpit. I still don't understand why they're in the armpit, but the teeth are in the armpit.
He's a weird lad, David Cronenberg.
Yeah. And this is more sort of typical like vampire in that respect. But I find that again the Soskers have brought it to a more female point of view. You actually get to know Rose in this one. In the original, the motorbike accident happens immediately and you have no idea who Rose is. In this one, they set her up so you can see her change, so you understand that changes are happening. And it's set in the fashion world, which is always interesting to see on screen because it's never portrayed as being a particularly nice place. And I think in that way it mirrors American Mary quite nicely. And I mean, it literally opens addressing the fact it's a remake. You know, so many remakes try and hide that they're a remake, but it opens with the fashion designer that Rose works for talking about like, why do we remake things? Why do we do this? And I enjoy that that's kind of like an immediate outing to the people watching it that they know what they're doing and just go with it.
Yeah. I really like this. I'll be honest. I didn't expect to, because you have that sort of baggage, don't you? When you're remaking horror royalty, you think, it's going to be inferior. It's going to be completely disposable. But no, I think it has a lot to offer, sort of horror in the wider sense, as well as sort of the satirical angle. I'm assuming there's a lot in here which I think they had interactions with the fashion industry, the Soskas, if I remember correctly. Maybe.
No, I know that they like the couture. The costumes that they wear in the film were their premiere outfits at Fright Fest. So they very much are fashion forwards in terms of their image and getting the message out there. So for American Mary, when they debuted that at Fright Fest, they rocked up in Mary's aprons and not a lot else. So they definitely know how to use fashion to make an impression. So yeah, I think from that respect, they're quite familiar with the industry.
Yes. So I imagine the satire of the studio in particular is an observation rather than just some offhand thing that they're trying to do. Because the studio, like you said, none of these studios, none of the fashion industry satires, they're not subtle and they never paint it as a wonderful place to work. And the manager of this place is a weird little boy, sort of a very broad German archetype, who uses her as an example to talk about what the sort of the motif of his new line is of Schadenfreude, which just, yeah, maybe it's one of those things like in the modern workplace sort of ethos that if somebody treat you like that, you think, okay, I'm quitting, bye. I'm not putting up with that. You're not using me for an example like that. But yeah, there's a lot to offer, I think, besides the satire.
Yeah, I think I watched this right after I'd finished the original Rabid. I do a thing on my blog where I write about remakes and originals, and a lot of the time I'm watching both of them together for the first time. So I'd watched them kind of back to back the first time I watched it. And I think, yeah, you're right. It's interesting how different a character Rose is, because I think in the original, she's very much embraces being a vampire and kind of going out. I think she's aware that she is infecting people quite early on, and she's just doesn't really try and fight her bloodlust. Whereas I think, there's the Rose in the remake. Yeah, she infects a lot of people without really realizing that she's done it. There's that scene in the club where everything kind of lights up red when she's kind of passed it on to someone else. It's sort of a lot more passive. And then I think as well, just the whole stuff about her getting the surgery performed on her in the original film. She's unconscious, and I think the doctor just knew she was hot and wanted to keep her hot, basically, and decides to just perform this surgery on her without her consent. Whereas this time, Rose decides that that's what she wants to do, and like decides to go ahead with it and things, and then sort of has to deal with the ramifications of that. So I think it's sort of the best way to do a remake, where you take sort of the core of the story and the characters, but then sort of go a completely different direction with it. And it was interesting to see that different, like, yeah, if Rose had just been more informed in the whole process and taken a different route, then this is how this is how it could have ended up instead. So yeah, I think I think I like them about the same, probably, the original and the remake, but it's just interesting to see, yeah, like how different filmmakers can take sort of the same story and interpret it in a different fashion.
It's not the same story, but Lee Winnell's Invisible Man had a similar sort of philosophy of retreading old hologram.
Yeah, I think stuff like we'll always talk about the 2019 remake of Black Christmas as well, and like the 2006 remake of Black Christmas as well. Like they all just took this core kind of thing of like sorority house attacked by killer for reasons, and then it's just interesting to see the different ways that people chose to adapt it. I think it's, if you have a good core idea, then I think those kind of remakes are a lot more interesting than just like the shot for shot ones that just feel like they're a bit pointless. I'd rather see something like this where it's takes a different path and comes to a different ending as well.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to the satire, there's multiple layers in this. I think like there was in American Mary, there's the fashion industry as well as the medical industry, which I think is sort of consistent. Well, it is consistent between the two of them. I don't think they're like North American medical institutions a great deal. Doctors, teachers, terrible in the first one. In this, it's sort of companies that present themselves as positive and helping people reclaim their lives, but in reality, they're very, very insidious. There's layers to this. And I think it's the product of better writers as well. Whereas in American Mary, I think there's an awful lot going on, and not a lot of it has breathing room. I think there's a lot more space to sort of let those messages sort of speak for themselves in Rabid.
Yeah, I think it's a much more mature approach to the storytelling. I mean, it has the benefit of being a remake and there being pre-existing text. They're also massive, as I said before, they're absolutely massive David Cronenberg fans. They did get the seal of approval from him to make the film, which they were delighted with. They did get a lot of flack from the Cronenberg purists before the film came out, but I feel that, as we've discussed, the fact that they didn't just do a shot-for-shot remake is the credit. If they had have gone down that route, I could fully understand Cronenberg fans getting really irate, but I think it was mature and interesting of them to just pick out a couple of key factors and elements and then push them into a completely different direction. I think it is interesting that this Rose is against the violence, whereas the original Rose, as Kim said, does seem to fully embrace it. It's quite a nice tact. I feel that there's more of a relationship with the stepsister character in this one, Chelsea. I think she's got quite an interesting story of her own going on in the background. That the fashion designer's always telling her to not eat. And, she's got to rest and she's got to look beautiful. And then he dismisses her the second that she doesn't. And she could have just been the archetypal beautiful bitch, but she does care for Rose. She goes about some of it in ways that she probably shouldn't, but you do get the feeling that she does genuinely care for her adopted stepsister.
Yeah. You haven't seen the originals. The original, it's all set in a tower block, or have I got the wrong Cronenberg there?
No, it's maybe thinking of what is it? Demons 2? Is that the one that's set in a tower block?
Oh, that isn't a tower block. No.
It's kind of it's like Kat said, it opens with a motorbike crash in the original, and then she just like happens to crash near this facility that do like stem cell research, so they decide to just do this operation on her anyway, and then she kind of like escapes from there and ends up kind of infecting. I think the infection seems a lot more widespread in the original. There's literally like scenes on a packed train where people are just like foaming at the mouth and like attacking each other and everything. So it feels like it's like a zombie apocalypse. Like, it feels like everyone dies really by the time at the end of the film. So I think the kind of that aspect of it was a bit lower key. It didn't feel like as widespread as in this one. A bit more contained.
They've going back to sort of the medical satire stuff. It also plays very, very weird in 2023 because the CDC get involved and they talk about sort of contagious diseases and quarantines, and it just feels very weird, very sort of flashbacky for a few years ago.
And the fact that did they not say at the end that like everyone who was infected got euthanized? Like they're just like, we just we didn't try and find a cure. We just killed them. Like that was the only thing. It's quite oblique. Again, I'm not surprised after American Mary, but it is a very bleak ending with this film as well.
There's a comment. There's a comment towards the start as well when they're investigating, where one of the medical professionals goes, "Oh, it's just a head cold," and we all very much remember when that term was bandied around before the beginning of the pandemic, and the fact that this came out in 2019, just debuted at Fright Fest in August 2019, so just months before the pandemic hit. It just feels all a bit weird that this sort of film was being made then, and then what we went into almost immediately after it was released.
Maybe that's too close to home because you get those movies that are the right story at the wrong time. I think I always bring it up often way too much, but Spontaneous has the same sort of problem. That feels like a COVID movie as well, and maybe that was punished because it felt a little bit too close to home. Because I don't hear people. The reason I say that is because I don't hear people talk about this. And as far as a horror remake, in recent years, there's not been many better.
I know, because I got this on DVD out of Asda, and it was like £3 or something, like not long after it came out. So yeah, it does seem like one that, especially with it being like a David Cronenberg remake, you think it would be like a kind of wider kind of spread on. I think it's a bit of a shame that it doesn't get kind of talked about more. I think American Mary is always the one people think of when they talk about the Soska Sisters, but I think being able to remake a David Cronenberg film and get something that's like equally as good is very impressive.
You know that would say that though, because the horror hardened elite hold these classics up on a pedestal that nobody can even come close to achieving. But this does. I mean, it's much. I can't speak of sort of the genre aspirations of the original, but this is a much more, even compared to American Mary, this is a much more straight down the line sort of. I don't know how you'd phrase it, but maybe a zombie movie in sort of like formula.
Yeah, it's kind of like half zombie, half vampire kind of thing. It's a strange one where she gets very beautiful, and that it leads to like more confidence and better career and things like that. But then she's in sort of infecting people, and they're turning into this like monstrous thing. So it's not like, there's usually the appeal of vampires where you're like, oh, you get to like live forever and you'll be really sexy and things. But she's like biting people and infecting them, and like they apparently there's nothing you can do for them. They just end up dead after like foaming at the mouth and ripping other people's throats out. So it's quite interesting.
There is a great scene on that though. The one in these, I'm assuming it's a soap, a doctor soap.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's another doctor thing, which things just go really badly. I do not like the medical profession. But that's a great scene where I think you meet at the pool at the medical facility.
Yeah.
Like, do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal guy. And yeah, it's just a really brilliant little scene that plays out in the closed stage.
Yeah, and I mean he's just a dick, isn't he? Because like I understand by this point he's been infected, but he is so horrible to his female co-star, and then he gets like irrationally jealous of the younger man coming in, and yeah, it's a nice sort of little side scene that sort of shows that the beginnings of the contagion getting out.
I think the nicest thing you can say about it is it's just as good as the original, which for a horror remake is basically a gold star, really, isn't it?
I was going to say I would also sort of highlight Laura Vandervoort, her performance in this. She's probably best known to a lot of people as playing Supergirl in Smallville. Other than that, she was in Bitten as well, which is like a Canadian werewolf TV show based on the books of Kelly Armstrong. But all of her roles, kind of historically, have been based on her looks and her being like this perfect princess almost. So the fact that she is so horrendously disfigured at moments in this film, and the fact that she pretty much begged the Soskas to be cast in it because she was fed up of the sorts of roles that she was getting where she had to be pretty and nice. She'd almost, before she got Rabid, she had pretty much given up being an actor and she wanted to move into producing instead because she was fed up of having to always maintain this like perfect image. So I like the fact that the Soskas and her worked together on this. And I mean, the reveal of a facial injury of the jaw is just grim. And I really respect Laura Vandervoort for being like, yeah, no, just make me ugly. I always appreciate it when an attractive actor or actress is like, yeah, just mess me up, do your worst.
Yeah, it's grim injury, really, isn't it? As far as gore, I think they've got a rare honor and rare distinction of genuinely being unpleasant, like genuinely unpleasant. Not there's like a level of gore, especially in sort of the sort of disposable fright fest horrors you get, where it's just more is better, just everything, blood everywhere. Whereas in their movies, it's just hard to look at, which I think is a rare qualifier, a rare distinction for them to have.
Yeah, because you don't see her face like immediately after the accident or anything. You like see it once they've like wired her teeth shut and things. And it's just, again, it's that you didn't need to see the like original injury, like seeing the sort of after effect is again more shocking. Though again, like a not great endorsement for the American medical system. The fact that they just like chuck her out of the hospital with her face looking like that, with like as if there's no follow up treatment, and she just give it a big syringe that she has to like eat her dinner through, and that's it. They're just like, well, we wired your teeth shut, you're done.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
The fact that she like, I think stuff like that, it does make more sense in like North America because obviously like she has going for that experimental treatment because she probably couldn't afford it otherwise. Whereas like if you were over here, like the NHS was, I would imagine attempt to do something to like help fix you. So it's, I mean, that in itself is quite scary that she just sort of didn't really see another option, I guess, to just trying to, I mean, she was just trying to make her life like livable again. She wasn't aiming to end up like this so-called fox that ended up like being amazing at her job and everything, but she just, yeah, the fact that they just kind of chuck her out and leave her to deal with that and like the associated trauma. She's already been through a car accident where she lost like a lot of her family, like they just chuck her out into the street basically. It's terrifying.
Anything else about Rabid either of you want to bring up before we move on?
The only other thing that is the bit right at the end where they're like at the fashion show and everyone's kind of getting infected. Like the one guy that gets infected in the alley, and he like when he stands up, he like he's like his whole legs stand up first, and then he kind of like bends his back up and like sits over. It's like one of the like, I love it. He turns up later and his kind of like head's all like kind of half burst open. I think the effects again in the Soska Sister films always look really like quite realistic. Like her again is very surgical, very like kind of clean cut gore rather than trying to be all like bloody and gnarly and stuff. But I do I do think that they have a very impressive knack for making things like properly disgusting, but very like, I appreciate looking at them at the same time.
Yeah, painful gore.
Yeah.
Kath, anything?
Yeah, I think we've covered most of it. I mean, I will give a shout out to the whole CM Punk storyline where he is just like toxic masculinity, chasing women down on the street, you know, abusing them. And then I think that's kind of the point where Rose is kind of realizes what she is capable of, / the beast within takes over. And she's like, yeah, I can eat him. He's a dick.
Yeah. What's your feelings on the ending, though? Because I'm not sure, really.
I mean, yeah, it's quite grim. Like I said, as American Mary doesn't have the cheeriest ending, and neither does this one. I think it's quite sad to see. I mean, obviously, it's hard to imagine how she would have gone on like living if people knew she'd infected people. I can't. In the original, they very much know that she's like Typhoid Mary that was spreading it all around, and they're like hunting her down. But I guess in this one, she kind of could have got away with it more. But it's quite sad to see her sort of building her life up to where she wanted it to be, and then sort of losing the people that are closest to her, and then just being stuck in a box with this in a very stylish like smock kind of gown thing. Again, the Soska sisters knocking it out of the park with the costumes, even when they're like a simple white dress. It looks amazing. But yeah, it's quite you just can't imagine like this guy's had his wife kind of locked up in this box for God knows how long, and I guess he's just gonna letting her take over that position, and no one knows where she is. Like, so it's it's very bleak, and it's a bit I guess it feels on brand for them, but it is quite sad when you've seen her kind of building her life up to just kind of get it all snatched away from her again.
Yeah, they do like a dark ending, but just the whole reveal with the doctor and his wife, and it's like, oh, we did this because they were trying to cure cancer, but the tumor's mutated. It's like, this is vampirism that doesn't heal all; it just mutates everything, and that is just that in itself would be a pretty harrowing film. It's only like a footnote in this, but yeah, it's bleak. And there's been this whole like sort of pseudo romance with the photographer guy, and initially you find out that he's paid to take her to the fashion party before she has her accident, and then you kind of think, oh no, he's a good guy, he cares about her, and then you find out that he's like being paid to monitor her and stuff. And yeah, I guess whereas there was a redeemable man in American Mary, I'm not sure there are any redeemable men in this one.
No. It's not done in a sort of hateful way. It's just these characters are naturally who they are.
Yeah.
And it makes sense for them to be that way.
And they're more real for it. The ambitious people in the world will, look at the world in a very different way to others. And I guess that's him. He wants to be a serious journalist, a serious photojournalist, and not just a fashion show photographer. And given the story of the century, of course, he's going to want to investigate it and explore it more. So it makes sense in a way that he would do that, but it's still awful to think that these people do exist in the world.
Yeah. So to close out, it's hard to talk about their career because they've struggled with every movie they've made. So I could say if their career ended today, I think it'd be wholly unsatisfying, really. I don't think anybody could be happy with two really good movies and just a lot of for hire jobs. But I think in a more positive sense to end this episode, what would you like to see them both do? What do you think they have in them? What sort of movie they have in them?
I mean, I'd love to see them do like a werewolf movie. I think seeing Rabid and like hints of kind of body horror stuff in American Mary and things. I imagine them doing I love a female centric werewolf movie anyway, so I think they'd be very good at that. But I think I could just imagine like the body horror and the transformation thing. I think they would get very right, and again, a more kind of character driven story about the person like turning into a werewolf than necessarily them like being perceived as a monster. I think they could do a very good job of that. They probably couldn't get Catherine Isabel in that because it's basically Ginger Snaps. But yeah, I mean, if they could get her in it, it'd be fab. But yeah, I think just seeing their like their aesthetic and the fashion and the like eye for the effects and stuff, a very kind of slick kind of werewolf film would be right up my street.
So I know that in addition to loving horror, they are also big comic book nerds. They have written several comics. They wrote one about Black Widow, and it was quite a dark story where the Black Widow was basically going around killing pedophiles. It was seen as controversial by fans because it wasn't your typical sort of Marvel friendly story. But I know that they're also big Deadpool fans, and I feel like at some point just giving them that arena to explore this other side of their interest would be quite interesting. I mean, maybe you could pair them up in some way and have them do a Blade sequel. I know obviously there's a new Blade being made at the moment, but something where you can combine their love of comic books and graphic novels with their upbringing in horror would be quite nice to see them get to do.
Yes, excellent. I think the only really thing I can add is I just want to see them do more, honestly. I know it's such a low bar to clear, but I was genuinely shocked when I saw how little of a filmography they have, because the amount of talent that they're put on screen in these two movies, you'd think studios, independent or otherwise, would be bending over backwards to have them make stuff for them. Because in the horror landscape, there's a lot of, and the genre landscape in a wider sense, there's a lot of things that just kind of look the same. It could be a movie by any number of people. There's very few things with a genuine sort of personality and sort of style to them. And these movies, within the eras that are made, they stand out like a sore thumb. And just, I want to see them do more. It is a very, very low bar to clear, but yeah, essentially.
Yeah. I think the issue that they have is that they are artists. As you said, their films are very distinctive to them. They have a very certain aesthetic and story archetype that they like to adhere to. And that scares studios. I know that they have pitched several ideas and concepts to Netflix and places, and they've had it sort of turned down because it's too extreme or not the norm. So I kind of feel that they're not necessarily going to get ahead unless they continue to self-fund, which is what they did with On the Edge, and then they've managed to get this new, I think it's a continuation of George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which is coming to Tubi soon or is already on Tubi. I think it's that power struggle. I mean, I've spoken with them at length, and they're very much we don't mind doing one for the studio, but they very much want to focus on their own voice and their own creations, and they want to continue championing the subcultures that don't get seen. So in American Mary, the body modification community, and On the Edge, it's the sex workers and representing the positivity that can come out of being a sex worker and not just the normal depravity that is portrayed on screen. So they've got the potential. It's just they need to find a studio willing to hand over the reins to them, which, as we know from other sort of independent filmmakers who have gone onto studio machines, doesn't always work. The amount of times Neil Marshall, for example, with Hellboy, he
sacrificial lamb there, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had that completely, he had an idea and a concept, he knew what he wanted to do, and then the studio were like, that's nice, we're doing this. And I wouldn't want them to get caught up in that machine, and I don't think that either one of them would let that happen, and I think that's the issue that they have.
The only thing I'll say is don't do accents if you're going to be in your movie. That's it. Only note. Yeah, I think that's a nice note to end on now. Kat, where can we find you and your work online?
So I am at Gizmo Shikari on Twitter, X, Instagram, Letterboxd, and cathughes.bsky.social on Blue Sky. On all of those, there is links to all of my work, including the podcast that I do with my 4-year-old called Movies with Mummy, which is chaos, but people are listening to it, which is just weird.
Well, people like chaos in their life. That's why TikTok exists.
Yeah.
Kim?
I am at Wicked Sister 69 on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, I write for Ghouls Magazine with Kat, and I also do a mother adjacent thing on there where I write about motherhood and horror films every month, which is fun. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I write on my own blog, which is called Little Red Horror, usually about comparing remakes to originals, or just writing very weirdly specific lists of like minute scenes that happen in horror films, because I have a Trello board of just like every single thing I've ever seen in a horror film. When I get enough to write a list, I usually do it. So yeah.
And I think that's it for this week's episode. Coming up next time, we have Nicholas Winding Refn. I think I'm saying that right. Winding. It's Scandinavian. It could be anything. So I'm assuming Drive will be on that episode. I think the Neon Demon is the other thing. Any feelings on either of those two of you?
I love the Neon Demon, and again, it's another one set within the fashion industry, and it's dark and it's bleak and it looks beautiful. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Neon Demon.
I want to watch the Neon Demon, but I have yet to work up the courage to do it. But my overarching love for Elle Fanning may win out, and I'll get round to it eventually.
It's an odd one. It's very odd, but it's worth the risk.
Okay.
But, yes, and that will all be in the next episode. And until then, thank you very, very much for listening.